On the cold autumn morning in Salem, Massachusetts, the local cemetery was shrouded in a dense fog, as if the sky itself mourned the tragedy that had struck Ethan and Lily Harper, twins aged just 14. The loss of their parents, victims of a sudden car accident, had left them both completely alone in the world. Sitting in front of the newly dug tomb, with their hands clasped and their eyes full of tears, they faced an emptiness that was impossible to fill. "How are we going to continue, Ethan?" asked Lily, her voice a broken whisper. Ethan, the oldest brother by only a few minutes, swallowed hard, trying to look strong, but the pain was visible on his face. "I don't know, Lily," he replied, staring at the tombstone as if waiting for an answer. "But I promise I will take care of you. Always." Ethan's words, although full of determination, were not enough to ease the weight they both carried. Since the day of the accident, they had been under the temporary care of an elderly neighbor, Senior Jenkins, who did her best to support them, but knew that her health and limited resources were not enough to provide what the twins needed. The possibility of being sent to separate foster homes hung over them like a constant threat. As they sat on the damp grass, the twins were overcome with memories of the happy times they had with their parents. His mother's laughter while making pancakes on Sundays, his father's excited voice reading bedtime stories. Everything now seemed so distant, like a dream that was slowly slipping from their minds. "I'd give anything to have them back," Lily said, squeezing Ethan's hand. "Anything." The silence of the cemetery was interrupted only by the sound of dry leaves being blown by the wind. Ethan and Lily, trapped in their sadness, didn't immediately realize they weren't alone. A shadowy figure appeared in the distance, slowly moving towards him. Dressed in a long black overcoat and a wide-brimmed hat, the person seemed to emerge from the mist, almost like an apparition. "Who is it?" asked Lily, her voice full of uneasiness. Ethan, trying to hide his own apprehension, quickly got to his feet, pulling his sister behind him. "I don't know," he replied, keeping his eyes fixed on the approaching figure. The tension was palpable, and the twins felt their hearts race. As the person got closer, they could see that it was a middle-aged man, with tired but expressive features. He stopped a few steps away and took off his hat, revealing gray hair and eyes filled with an intensity that made them wonder if he knew them. "Ethan, Lily," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "I know you are suffering, and I know that now it seems like everything is lost. But there is something you need to know." The twins looked at each other, confused and wary. "Who are you?" Ethan asked, trying to sound brave. The man hesitated for a moment before replying, "My name is Victor Grant, and I'm here because there are truths about your parents that you need to know." Although his words were shrouded in mystery, there was something about Victor that aroused curiosity and fear in the twins. They didn't know who he was or how he knew so much about them, but one thing was certain. His presence at that moment was not a coincidence. Ethan and Lily, still in shock from Victor's unexpected arrival, remained still as he moved a little closer. "I know this must seem strange," he began, setting his hat aside, "but your parents and I share a past that you need to understand. And now, more than ever, it is time for you to know the truth." "What truth?" Lily asked with a mixture of anxiety and curiosity. His voice was shaking, but there was a glimmer of hope in his eyes, as if Victor's words could offer some kind of comfort or explanation for what was happening. Ethan, however, remained suspicious. "How do you know our parents? And why does it only appear now?" he questioned, crossing his arms in an attempt to appear more firm than he felt. Victor took a deep breath, as if preparing to carry a weight that had haunted him for years. "Your parents were extraordinary people," he began, choosing each word carefully. "But they were also involved in something most people could never imagine. Something that put their lives, and now yours, at risk." Ethan took a step forward, his gaze fixed on Victor. "What are you talking about?" he asked with growing impatience. Victor opened his mouth to respond, but hesitated, as if deciding how much he could reveal. Finally he said, "They were part of a secret organization. A group dedicated to protecting valuable information and artifacts that could change the course of the world if they fell into the wrong hands." Lily gasped, clasping her hands over her mouth. Our parents? No, that doesn't make sense. They were ordinary people. Teachers. They loved walks in the park and old movies. His words were interrupted by Victor, who shook his head firmly. This was the life they wanted for you. Peaceful life, away from danger. But it's not always possible to escape the past. Ethan, although skeptical, couldn't deny that something in Victor's words rang true. He had always noticed little details that he had never been able to explain. His parents' long trips without much detail, the strange late-night phone calls, and even the old trunk in the attic that was always locked. Are you saying they lived a double life? He asked, trying to process everything. Victor nodded, his expression full of gravity. Yes, and the accident that took their lives wasn't just a random tragedy. The words fell like thunder. Lily felt her legs weaken, and Ethan caught her before she fell. What do you mean by that? Demanded Ethan, his voice now full of emotion. I believe your parents were targeted for something bigger, Victor said. And unfortunately, you both may be at the same risk. He paused, watching the twins' scared faces. But I won't let that happen. I promised your parents that if anything happened to them, I would take care of you. And that's my mission now. As the wind picked up, Ethan and Lily felt the ground beneath them seem to crumble. Everything they knew, everything they believed, now seemed like a lie. However, Victor's words awakened something new in them, a silent determination to discover the truth, no matter how difficult the path ahead. Victor's revelation left Ethan and Lily perplexed. The idea that his parents led a double life seemed absurd, but at the same time, small details of his past began to make sense. They remembered whispered conversations behind closed doors, their parents' insistence that they never trust strangers, and even sudden trips that were never fully explained. Now, it seemed that the answers they were looking for were in the hands of this mysterious man. Why didn't our parents ever tell us about this? Lily asked, her voice a mix of pain and curiosity. She looked at Victor with eyes full of emotion. If they were in danger, why did they leave us in the dark? Victor sighed, running a hand through his gray hair. They wanted to protect you, he explained. The less you knew, the safer you would be. But now that they are gone, the danger may be turning toward you. Ethan, always the more rational of the two, crossed his arms and looked at Victor suspiciously. And why should we believe you? You appear out of nowhere. Say you know our parents and expect us to accept everything without question. Victor looked directly at Ethan, his gaze steady. I understand your distrust, he said, but I can prove it. He took a yellowed envelope from his pocket, with Ethan and Lily's names handwritten on it. Your parents gave me this to give to you in case something happened to them. Lily took the envelope with shaking hands. The paper was worn, but their names were written in their mother's unmistakable handwriting. She looked at Ethan, who nodded, and then opened the envelope. Inside was a letter and a small, ancient-looking key. The letter began with, Dear Ethan and Lily, if you're reading this, it's because something happened to us that we couldn't avoid. The letter explained how his parents, Jonathan and Elizabeth Harper, had become involved in the secret organization called the Order of Dawn, which was dedicated to protecting historical secrets and dangerous artifacts. They mentioned one artifact in particular, something called the Ebony Reliquary, which was linked to great danger. If something happens to us, trust Victor. He knows what to do. Read the end of the letter. The key, as Victor explained, opened the chest that was in the attic of the Harper house. What's inside the trunk, he said, is the first piece of the puzzle. Your parents left clues so you could finish what they started. Ethan and Lily exchanged looks, both feeling a mix of fear and determination. If that's true, Ethan said, his voice firm, then we won't run away. Let's find out the truth, no matter how scary it is. Lily nodded, wiping away her tears. We need to do this for our parents. Victor smiled slightly, impressed by the twins' courage. Very well, he said. Then we must begin immediately. Every moment counts. The trio set off for the Harpers' old home, which had remained untouched since the accident. When they entered, a feeling of melancholy came over the twins. The house was full of memories, but now it seemed like just an echo of the past. They went up to the attic, where they found the chest mentioned in the letter. With tentative hands, Ethan inserted the key into the lock and slowly turned it. The sound of the trunk opening echoed through the attic. Inside were notebooks, maps, and a small wooden box. The notebooks were filled with notes and sketches from his parents, detailing his mission in the Order of the Dawn. The box contained a strange object, a black sphere with engraved inscriptions. "This is the Ebony Reliquary," said Victor, in a grave tone. "And now it's in your hands." As they examined the contents of the chest, Victor began to explain the importance of the Ebony Reliquary. "This artifact is much more than it seems," he said, holding the sphere carefully. "It contains secrets that, if they fall into the wrong hands, could have devastating consequences. Your parents dedicated their lives to keeping you safe." Lily looked at the sphere curiously. "What does he do?" she asked. "That is still a complete mystery," replied Victor. "But we know he is a key to something bigger." His parents believed he could reveal the location of lost knowledge, something that could change the fate of the world. Victor's words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Ethan frowned. "And why us? Why did they leave this to us, knowing the danger involved?" Victor looked at the twins with a serious look. "Because they believed you would be able to finish what they started. You are stronger than you know, and I am here to help you." Ethan and Lily, although still scared, felt they had no other choice. They needed to discover the truth. Among the maps and notebooks, there was a letter written by their father. She indicated a place in Newport, Rhode Island, where it appeared the Harpers had hidden additional information. "It seems our parents left us with a real treasure hunt," said Lily, trying to ease the tension. Ethan didn't smile. "It's not just a game, Lily. It's our chance to find out who they really were." Victor helped organize the materials, and the trio began planning the trip. Lily, who had always been more excited about adventures, picked up one of the maps and tried to decipher it. "It looks like this spot here is a lighthouse," she said, pointing to a mark on the paper. Victor confirmed. "Yes, the Brenton Point Lighthouse. It was an important place for the Order of the Dawn." His parents believed something was hidden there. The next day, they hit the road toward Newport. During the trip, Victor shared more stories about the Harpers, revealing how much they were respected within the organization. "They were true heroes," he said, "but they were also incredible parents. Everything they did was for you." Victor's words brought comfort to the twins, but also increased their determination to honor their parents' legacy. Upon arriving at the Brenton Point Lighthouse, the group found the place deserted and partially in ruins. The ancient structure seemed to hide secrets in every corner. Following the letter's instructions, they looked for a specific symbol, a drawing of a rising sun. After hours of searching, Lily shouted, "I found it!" There was a secret compartment at the base of the lighthouse, hidden under a loose rock. Inside the compartment, they found a small metal safe. "This is where the next clue is," Victor said, his tone hopeful. Ethan took the safe and put it in a backpack. "Let's open this in a safer place," he suggested. The three quickly left, but they didn't realize that they were being watched from afar. As they drove away from the lighthouse, Victor suddenly stopped. "Something is wrong," he said, looking around. Before he could explain, the sound of quick footsteps echoed through the room. Someone was after them. And for the first time, the twins realized that their parents' legacy could be even more dangerous than they imagined. As Ethan, Lily, and Victor left the lighthouse, a muffled sound caught the group's attention. Rapid footsteps came from opposite directions, accompanied by the subtle sound of branches breaking and leaves being trampled. "Run!" shouted Victor, pulling the twins towards the car parked a few meters away. Ethan held tightly to the backpack containing the metal safe, while Lily ran beside him, her heart beating fast. The thick fog that covered the place made vision difficult, making the escape even more tense. "Who is following us?" Lily asked, panting. Victor replied without hesitation. "Probably members of a faction that has long been trying to obtain the Ebony Reliquary. Your parents mentioned that they are relentless." Ethan, his jaw clenched, looked back and saw two figures approaching quickly. They were hooded and appeared to be armed. As soon as they reached the car, Victor quickly unlocked the doors. "Come in quickly," he shouted. Ethan and Lily threw themselves into the back seat, while Victor got behind the wheel. The engine roared, and the car sped toward the main road. The pursuers, however, did not give up easily. In a black vehicle, they began to follow them closely. Inside the car, Victor remained calm, but his mind was working frantically. "Hold on," he shouted, turning sharply onto a curvy side road. Lily grabbed the seat, while Ethan kept his eyes fixed on his backpack. "What do they want from this?" he asked, holding the metal safe as if his life depended on it. "They believe the vault contains vital information about the location of the Ebony Reliquary," Victor explained. "If they are right, we need to protect it at all costs." The black vehicle continued behind them, getting closer and closer. One of the pursuers rolled down the window and pointed a gun in their direction. Lily screamed, and Victor accelerated even more, maneuvering deftly to avoid a shot. As the chase continued, Victor spotted a narrow trail leading into a forested area. "We'll lose them there," he said, turning the steering wheel sharply. The car entered the trail, shaking violently over the uneven terrain. The twins held on tightly, while Victor did his best to maintain control of the vehicle. The pursuer's car tried to follow them, but lost control on a sharp bend, crashing into a tree. Victor took advantage and continued driving until they reached a safe point in the forest. He turned off the engine and took a deep breath. "We are temporarily safe," he said, "but we can't stay here for long." As Victor checked his surroundings, Ethan opened the safe for the first time. Inside, they found a small leather diary and an old map with markings pointing to various locations. The diary contained notes made by their father, describing the connection between the Ebony Reliquary and a place called Lumen Caves, in the interior of the state of Vermont. "That's where we need to go," Ethan said with determination. Victor agreed, but warned, "From now on, we will need to be even more cautious. These men will not give up easily." Lily, despite her fear, lifted her chin. "If our parents faced this, so can we." Ethan held her hand and nodded. "We will honor their legacy no matter what." With the map in hand, Victor guided the twins towards Vermont, a journey of several hours. While driving, the group took a break at a roadside restaurant to rest and review the information found in the diary. Sitting at a table in the back, Victor opened his notebook and began to read aloud. "The Ebony Reliquary is not just an object," he explained. "According to his parents, it contains an ancient secret that could change the course of humanity, but only if used correctly." Ethan and Lily exchanged glances, still trying to process the magnitude of the situation. "What happens if it falls into the wrong hands?" Lily asked. Victor hesitated before answering. "It could be used to manipulate the balance of power in the world. That's why we need to keep you safe." Their father's notes mentioned that the Lumen Caves were known for their complex labyrinths and hidden passages. The map detailed a specific route that led to a secret chamber, where something called the Lumen Codex would be saved. "The Codex appears to be the key to unlocking the true power of the reliquary," said Victor. As they discussed the plan, Ethan noticed that a man in the restaurant seemed to be watching them from afar. He whispered to Victor, who discreetly took a look. "Don't do anything that attracts attention," he said. "But we need to get out of here immediately." The group quickly paid the bill and returned to the car, realizing that they were being followed again. The tension increased as they approached the Lumen Caves. Victor used secondary roads to lose potential pursuers, while the twins tried to decipher more clues from the diary. "Look at this," said Lily, pointing to a drawing in the notebook. "It looks like a pattern that matches the map." Ethan nodded. "It must be the cave entrance." When they arrived at the area indicated by the map, Victor parked the car in a hidden clearing. The place was surrounded by tall trees, and the sound of the wind passing through the leaves created an unsettling atmosphere. "We're close," Victor said, checking the map once more. The cave entrance should be just ahead. With flashlights in hand, they began walking through the forest. The terrain was uneven, but the group's determination kept them steady. Finally, they found the cave entrance, a natural rock arch covered in moss. "It's here," Lily said, her voice thick with excitement and nervousness. Before they entered, Victor warned them, The Lumen Caves are known for their natural traps and confusing paths. We need to be together all the time. Ethan and Lily nodded, both aware that this could be the most dangerous moment of their lives. Upon entering, they were greeted by almost absolute darkness. The lanterns illuminated damp walls and ancient inscriptions that seemed to tell stories of times gone by. These markings, our parents mentioned something about them in the diary, Ethan said, analyzing the symbols. Victor confirmed, they are guides. We need to follow them carefully. As they advanced, the air became colder and the sound of water drops echoed through the empty space. Each step seemed fraught with tension, but also with expectation. Deep in their hearts, Ethan and Lily knew they were about to discover something that would change not only their lives, but possibly the fate of everyone around them. The Lumen Caves seemed to take on a life of their own as Ethan, Lily, and Victor ventured deeper inside. The rocky walls were covered in ancient inscriptions, some with patterns so intricate they seemed to vibrate in the lantern light. These inscriptions, said Victor, closely examining one of them, are a lost language. Your parents believed they were coded instructions for finding the Lumen Codex. Lily ran her fingers over one of the inscriptions, trying to decipher it. These symbols repeat themselves, she noted. Ethan, who was holding the diary, compared the marks on the wall with the drawings in his father's notebook. Here, he exclaimed, pointing to a sketch that exactly matched the symbols. It's like he's guiding us, Victor confirmed with a nod. So we are on the right track. But we need to be careful. These caves are not meant to be explored easily. The group followed the inscriptions, which formed a kind of visual trail on the walls. However, the path became increasingly narrow and uneven. At a certain point, they came to a fork in the road. Two dark tunnels opened up ahead, and the symbols on the walls gave no clear indication of which one to follow. And now? Lily asked anxiously. Victor studied the map and the diary, looking for any clues. There's a note here, he said, pointing to a page. It says we should look for the sound of running water. The group fell silent, focusing on the sounds around them. From one of the tunnels, they could hear a slight, almost imperceptible drip. It's this way, said Ethan, leading the way confidently. The chosen tunnel led to a wider space, where the light from the lanterns reflected in a small natural pool. Around it, more inscriptions were engraved, but these were different. They looked like drawings of stars and constellations. What does that mean? Asked Lily, amazed. Victor carefully analyzed the drawings and noticed that one of them pointed to an opening in the wall, partially hidden by stones. There's our next clue, he said, as the group worked to remove the rocks. Behind them, they found a narrow passage that led to another, even darker chamber. Upon entering, they were surprised by a faint glow emanating from a structure in the center of the space. What is that? Ethan asked, approaching cautiously. In the center of the chamber, there was a stone pedestal, on which rested a small book bound in black leather, the Codex of Lumen. Its contours seemed to pulse with a subtle energy, as if it were something alive. It's him, said Victor, with a mixture of relief and apprehension. The Codex contains the instructions for using the ebony reliquary. Your parents gave their lives to protect you. Lily approached the pedestal, but Victor stopped her. Wait, he said seriously. Your parents mentioned traps at this location. We need to tread carefully. He examined the pedestal and noticed that it was surrounded by thin lines on the floor, almost invisible. These lines are triggers. If we're not careful, we could activate something dangerous. Ethan had an idea. Using a loose rock, he tested one of the lines by throwing it onto the pedestal. Immediately, a screeching sound echoed through the chamber, followed by the movement of arrows shooting from the walls. It's definitely a trap, he said with a sigh. Victor, more experienced, used a stick to push the pressure lines and, with precise movements, reached the Codex without activating any more traps. With the Codex in hand, the group knew that the next step would be to uncover its instructions. But before they could leave the cave, they heard voices echoing in the tunnel they came from. They found us, Victor said, his tone grave. We need to leave now. The footsteps echoing through the tunnels became louder and more threatening. Victor turned off the flashlight and motioned for Ethan and Lily to be silent. The darkness of the cave was total, but his senses were heightened by fear. "They're not far away," Victor whispered, approaching the twins. "We need to lose them." Ethan, tightly holding the ebony reliquary in his backpack, looked at Victor. "How do we do this? They already know where we are." Victor thought quickly and suggested a risky idea. "I'll distract them. You two go through that tunnel on the right. It must lead to an alternative exit that your parents mentioned in the diary." "No," Lily protested. "We won't leave you behind." Victor grabbed her shoulder, his eyes conveying urgency. "You are the priority. Your parents trusted me to protect them, and that's what I'm going to do." Reluctantly, Ethan took Lily's hand and began to guide her towards the indicated tunnel. Victor headed in the opposite direction, creating deliberate noises to attract pursuers. The plan worked, and the voices and footsteps quickly moved away from Ethan and Lily. As they ran through the narrow tunnel, the twins heard the distant sound of gunshots and screams, but they could not stop to help. "He knows what he's doing," Ethan said, trying to reassure Lily. The tunnel led to a wider passage, where a dim light indicated a possible exit. "We're almost there," Ethan said, encouraging Lily, who was struggling to keep up. When they arrived at the exit, they were greeted by an unexpected scene. The entrance to a dense forest, illuminated by moonlight. However, before they could advance, two hooded figures emerged from the shadows, blocking their path. "Hand over the codex and reliquary," said a cold voice. Lily instinctively backed away, while Ethan held the backpack tightly. "You have no idea what you are dealing with," the man continued, "but I can guarantee that they won't get out of here alive if they resist." Ethan knew they couldn't fight them, but he also couldn't just hand over the artifacts. "What do we do?" whispered Lily, her voice full of panic. Before Ethan could respond, a thunderous sound echoed through the forest, a gunshot. One of the hooded men fell, and Victor emerged from the shadows, holding a gun. "Run," he shouted. Adrenaline took over the twins as they ran through the forest, following Victor as he guided them away from danger. The second hooded man tried to follow them, but Victor fired another shot, forcing him to retreat. After what seemed like hours of escape, the group finally found a safe hiding place in a clearing. Victor, wounded in the arm, sat down heavily on a rock. "They won't give up," he said, as Lily improvised a bandage from a piece of his shirt. Ethan placed his backpack on the floor and looked at Victor. "We have the codex. What do we do now?" Victor took a deep breath before responding. "Now we have deciphered the instructions, and we hope they give us a head start before they catch us again." Despite the fear and exhaustion, the twins knew they were closer to the truth than ever, and to discovering their parents' true sacrifice. In the forest clearing, under the pale light of the moon, Victor, Ethan, and Lily finally had a moment of calm to examine the Lumen Codex. The small book, with yellowed pages and complex inscriptions, looked more like an artifact than a simple manual. Ethan opened the first page, and soon noticed that the text was not in English or any language he recognized. "How are we going to decipher this?" he asked, frustrated. Victor, still recovering from the wound on his arm, approached. "Your parents mentioned that the codex required more than linguistic knowledge. It was designed to be understood only by those who followed the path of the Order of the Dawn." He pointed to a section of the diary that talked about hidden symbols that could only be revealed under certain conditions. "We need special light," he said. Lily examined the inscriptions carefully. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a series of symbols at the bottom of the page. "It looks like a pattern. Maybe a guide of sorts." Victor agreed but wasn't sure how to activate it. It was then that Ethan had an idea. "What if we use moonlight?" he suggested. "If the reliquary is connected to the codex, perhaps it reacts to natural light." They positioned the codex under a beam of light passing through the trees. For a moment, nothing happened, but then the symbols began to glow softly, forming patterns that moved as if they were alive. "It works!" exclaimed Lily, amazed. Ethan and Victor watched as the patterns rearranged themselves, creating a sort of three-dimensional map over the pages of the book. The map seemed to indicate a specific location, with coordinates that Victor quickly noted. It leads to a location on the coast of Maine, he said. A small village called Aircliff. According to your parents, that is where the reliquary should be activated. Lily looked at him with concern. Activated? What does that mean? Victor explained. The reliquary is more than an object. He is a key but also a source of power. Activating it requires a series of steps, and any mistake could be catastrophic. Ethan shook his head, trying to process everything. So why did our parents keep it? Why didn't they destroy it? Victor replied with a somber tone, because they believed the reliquary could also save lives if used correctly. As they planned their next step, fatigue finally caught up with them. Victor insisted that they rest a little before continuing their journey. Tomorrow will be a long day, he said, trying to sound optimistic. Ethan and Lily, exhausted, agreed. However, the forest clearing still felt like an unsafe place. They took turns standing guard, with Victor being the first to keep watch. During his shift, Lily, who couldn't sleep, approached Victor. "Do you really believe we can do this?" she asked with a tone of vulnerability. Victor looked at her seriously. "I believe in you." His parents believed it too. They sacrificed everything so that you would have the chance to finish what they started. Victor's words gave Lily some comfort, but she knew the path ahead would be dangerous. As the group finally fell asleep for a few hours, the clearing fell silent except for the soft sound of trees swaying in the wind. They didn't know it, but invisible eyes were still watching them, waiting for the right moment to attack. The next morning, before dawn, Victor, Ethan, and Lily resumed their journey towards Aircliff. The tension in the group was palpable. Everyone knew that time was against them and that the pursuers would not take long to catch up. The drive to Maine was filled with silence and reflection, interrupted only by quick discussions about the plan. Upon arriving at the village of Aircliff, they were greeted by a peaceful and almost deserted scene. Small wooden houses and fishing boats lined the shore, but there was no sign of residents. "It's like time has stopped here," commented Lily, looking around. Victor examined the codex map, which pointed to an old abandoned church on top of a hill. The church was an imposing structure, despite being worn out by time. When they entered, they were greeted by the echoing sound of their footsteps on the stone floor. On the altar, there was a circular platform with inscriptions similar to those in the codex. "It's here," said Victor, placing the reliquary in the center of the platform. As soon as the reliquary was positioned, the platform began to emit an intense glow. The surrounding inscriptions came to life, moving like invisible gears. Lily grabbed Ethan's arm, scared, as Victor read the codex instructions aloud. "The right words must be spoken," he said. "But be careful. Any mistake can trigger unpredictable consequences." Victor began to recite the words described in the codex, his voice steady despite his nervousness. The reliquary responded by emitting an even stronger light, which seemed to pulse like a heart. However, before they could complete the ritual, the pursuers finally caught up with them. The church door was violently opened, and armed men entered, demanding they stop. Ethan and Lily stood in front of the reliquary, instinctively protecting it. "We're not going to hand this over to you," shouted Ethan, with a courage that surprised even himself. The men advanced, but Victor, even though he was injured, did not hesitate to confront them. "We will finish this," he shouted at the twins. Victor fought with determination, giving Ethan and Lily time to complete the ritual. Lily took the codex and continued reading the instructions, while Ethan focused on the reliquary, trying to keep it steady. The light around the platform became almost blinding, filling the church with an energy that seemed to shake its foundations. In the final moment, Victor, seriously injured, used his last strength to stop his enemies, sacrificing himself to protect the twins. "You guys need to finish this," he said before collapsing. Ethan and Lily, now alone, completed the ritual. The reliquary emitted a burst of light that disintegrated the pursuers and sealed their power. With silence restored to the church, Ethan and Lily looked at the reliquary, which now looked like an ordinary stone. "It's done," said Lily, exhausted. "But it cost a lot." Ethan held her hand, tears in his eyes. "Victor believed in us. And now we need to honor him As they left the church, the sun was rising, bathing the village in golden light. Despite the loss of Victor, Ethan and Lily felt stronger and more determined. They had honored their parents' legacy and, even with emotional scars, were ready to face the future. The reliquary was safe, and its journey had come to an end, or perhaps a new beginning.